Hello. Today I have a different kind of story for you. It's a Jewish story. It's a story about afterlife in some regards. And it helps if you understand a certain thing about the Jewish beliefs in afterlife at the time of this story, because they've changed many times over the millennia. But at this time, the belief was that after you died, you ascended. And you ascended higher and higher, depending upon how good a life you had. And that as you ascended, there were different palaces that you could visit, again, depending upon how good a life yours had been. This particular story is about a rabbi. His name is Rabbi Yitzhak of Vorki. It's also about his son, Mendele, and about his best friend, the Kutzker Rabbi. So, with that in mind, here's the story of Rabbi Yitzhak of Vorki. Now, what you also need to know about Rabbi Yitzhak was that he was a great scholar. And he and his friend, the Kutzker Rebbe, were very, very close. But even closer than the two of them was the relationship between Yitzhak and his son Mendele. They were very, very close. They were both adults, they lived in different towns, but they wanted to stay in as much touch as they could, and so they wrote each other letters every day. Now, this was unusual. We didn't have a quick post office, we certainly didn't have email, and so it was a real commitment to make a letter every day to send to someone else. But this is what they did. 6 days a week, they would write a letter to each other and send it. And in that way, they stayed in great touch. Now, of course, as things happen, Rabbi Yitzhak grew older and older, and finally he died. And after the 30 days of mourning, Rabbi Mendele, Rabbi Yitzhak's son, went to see his father's good friend, the Kutzker Rebbe. And he said, "You know, Rebbe, I'm a little concerned. The 30 days of mourning have passed, and I understand that during that time I shouldn't have been receiving any letters from my father. But now those days are over and there's still no letter, and I'm worried about him." Now, you and I might think this is strange, but this wasn't to either Mendele or to the Kutzker Rebbe. And the Kutzker Rebbe said, "You know, Mendele, I've noticed the same thing, because while we didn't write every day, we did write frequently, and I also have not received any letters. Let me investigate." So the Kutzker Rebbe embarked on what's called a soul ascent. He allowed his soul to leave his body, and he rose up through the various palaces. Now, he knew that his friend was a great scholar and had lived a very good life, so he knew he would have to ascend a great deal. And he ascended first to the palace of Rashi. Rashi, a great commentator on the entire Torah. And he was so excited to reach the palace of Rashi that for the first couple of hours, he even forgot why he was there. I mean, here was a chance to study with the great Rashi. And indeed, people were gathered around Rashi studying with great intent. But then he remembered, and he hurried over to Rashi and he said, "Dear Rebbe," he said, I'm looking for my dear friend. You may have seen him. He may have been here. His name is Rabbi Yitzhak of Vorki." Rashi said, "Ah, Rabbi Yitzhak, I remember him. He was quite something. He did stop by, but he continued to ascend." So the Kutzker Rebbe then started his ascent again, and he went further up. And this time he rose further and further and further until he got to the palace of Moses. Moses. Here he was, in the presence of Moses, our greatest teacher. And indeed, there were swarms of people gathered around Moses, studying with him. The Kutzker Rebbe couldn't help himself. He probably spent days there studying. I mean, the man who brought down the 10 Commandments, the whole Torah. What an opportunity. But finally he remembered. And he went to Moshe and he said, Moses, have you perhaps seen my dear friend, Rabbi Yitzhak of Vorki? Moshe said, oh, I saw him, but he was destined for a much higher place than this. Higher than you? Yes. I had no idea. So the Kotzker Rebbe ascends even further. And now he's reached the palace of Abraham, our father, the progenitor of all our people. It must have taken him a month to remember his friend, but he finally did. And he goes to Abraham and he says, oh, Abraham, I've been looking for my dear friend. And I've ascended all this height looking for him. I'm hoping he's here with you somewhere, but I can't see him amongst this multitude. And Abraham said, he was here, but he is no longer. He is no longer. How? He's ascended further? Where could that be? How could I find him? If you want to find him, Abraham said, you'll have to go back down to earth. And you'll have to find the darkest forest. And in the center of the darkest forest, you'll find an ocean. And you'll find him there. The Kotzker Rebbe didn't know what to make of this, but he wanted to find his friend, so he descended down and down and down, back all the way to earth, and it wasn't hard to spot that dark forest from that great distance. And he flew down, made his way through the forest, and as he was approaching what he knew would be the ocean, the sky was getting a little lighter, he heard a sighing. He couldn't quite figure out what it was, but he knew that as he got closer and closer to the brightness, the sighing was becoming louder. It was becoming a moaning. And finally, as he came upon the shore of this ocean, this very strange ocean, it wasn't a moaning he heard, but a wailing and a weeping. And he thought, what has happened to my friend? He saw him down the beach, and as he headed down the beach, he noticed that with each crash of the waves, that wailing, that crying would become more and more intense. He could hardly stand it. Finally, he reached his friend, and he took hold of him and said, Yitzhak, I've been so worried about you. What are you doing, and what is this place? Rabbi Yitzhak turned to the Kotzker Rebbe and said, This is the ocean of tears. This is the ocean formed by all the tears of the innocent who suffered in this life. And I have told God that I will not ascend any further until he dries every one of these tears. And that's the story of Rabbi Yitzhak.